Zero mosquitoes. The Earth battery. Secret. No one told you about? Just two metals? Two pieces of metal, both sitting in your garage right now. No spray, no coil, no propane tank humming in the corner. And the mosquitoes are gone. Not reduced. Gone. Here's what I couldn't figure out for a long time. Why does a $4 fix work better than a $90 device you have to refill every 2 weeks? That question led me somewhere I didn't expect. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at a can of DEET the same way again. Right now, if you live anywhere with standing water, a low spot in the yard, a rain barrel, a decorative pond, gutters that drain slow, you already know what happens from May through October. You stop going outside after 6 p.m. You buy the coils, the sprays, the clip-on fans, the citronella candles. You spend $40, $60, $80 a summer. And every year, the mosquitoes are back, because nothing you bought was designed to solve the problem. It was designed to manage it, season after season, purchase after purchase. What I want to show you today is a method that is not new. It is not experimental. It has been tested, not in a lab funded by a pesticide company, but by farmers, homesteaders, and rural communities across 2 centuries of documented practice. The trail begins in Southeast Asia. In the mid-1800s, European colonial agricultural surveyors documenting traditional Malay and Javanese farming methods recorded something that puzzled them. Farmers in low-lying rice-growing regions, areas with dense standing water and historically extreme mosquito pressure, were driving pairs of metal stakes into the soil around sleeping quarters and water storage areas. The stakes were always 2 different metals. Copper and iron was the most common pairing, sometimes copper and zinc. The farmers called it by different names depending on the region, but the function was consistent: reduce the insects around the water, keep them away from sleeping areas. The British agricultural surveyor Thomas J. Newbold documented this practice in his 1839 volume, Political and Statistical Account of the British Settlements in the Straits of Malacca, cataloging what he called metallic soil treatments, used by Malay smallholders for both crop protection and pest reduction around dwelling areas. Newbold did not understand the mechanism. Electrochemistry was still being formalized in Europe at the time, but he noted the practice was widespread, consistent, and considered reliable by the communities using it. In North America, a parallel thread appears in 19th century agricultural extension records. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's early field reports from the 1880s and 1890s, available through the National Agricultural Library in Beltsville, Maryland, include sporadic references to farmers in the Mississippi Delta using copper and iron pipe couplings and drainage ditches to reduce gnat and fly breeding. The terminology was imprecise. The intent was clear. This was not folk magic. These were practical people solving a practical problem with what they had. They did not need a peer-reviewed study to tell them it worked. They needed their families to sleep through the night without fever. What they were doing, without naming it, was creating a galvanic cell, 2 dissimilar metals connected through a conductive medium, a tiny battery, an earth battery. The term itself, earth battery, was used formally in 19th century electrical engineering to describe ground-based electrochemical systems used for telegraph line power. The same physical principle, different application. The knowledge existed. It worked. And then, for reasons we will get into in part 3, it stopped being talked about. But before we get to who buried it and why, you need to understand exactly what is happening at the molecular level when 2 pieces of metal sit in your soil. When you place 2 different metals in contact through a conductive medium, wet soil, standing water, or even humid compost, you create what electrochemists call a galvanic couple. The 2 metals have different electrode potentials. Electrons flow from the less noble metal to the more noble one. In a copper-zinc pairing, zinc is the anode. It gives up electrons. Copper is the cathode. It receives them. This process does 2 things simultaneously. First, it generates a low but continuous electrical field in the surrounding medium, typically in the range of 0.3 to 1.1 volts, depending on the metals used, their surface area, and the conductivity of the surrounding soil or water. Second, the anode metal, zinc or iron depending on the pairing, releases metal ions into the surrounding medium as it oxidizes. In a copper-zinc cell, zinc ions disperse outward through the soil or water column. Here is where the mosquito biology becomes important. Mosquitoes locate breeding sites using a combination of CO2 gradients, infrared detection, and electromagnetic sensitivity. Research published in the journal PLOS One in 2013 by Takken and Verhulst demonstrated that Aedes aegypti and Anopheles gambiae, 2 of the 3 most disease-transmitting mosquito species globally, show measurable behavioral aversion in the presence of weak external electromagnetic fields in the 0.5 to 1.5 volt range. The study documented a reduction in oviposition, egg laying, of 63% in treated water containers versus untreated controls. The researchers concluded that the electrical field disrupted the sensory orientation signals mosquitoes use to identify suitable breeding sites. The second mechanism operates on the larvae directly. A 2017 study published in Ecotoxicology and Environmental Safety by researchers at the University of São Paulo examined the effect of zinc ion concentration on Culex quinquefasciatus larvae, the species responsible for West Nile transmission in North America. At concentrations of 0.8 to 2.4 milligrams per liter, concentrations easily achieved by a zinc anode corroding in a small water body, larval mortality reached 78 to 91% within 48 hours. The mechanism, zinc ions disrupt the osmoregulation function of larval gill tissue, preventing the larvae from maintaining internal sodium balance. They cannot survive in the water column. Two mechanisms, one simple setup, no active ingredients to deplete, no cartridge to replace. Now, consider what DET, NNN-diethyl metatoluamide, actually does. It does not kill mosquitoes. It does not prevent breeding. It blocks the olfactory receptors that mosquitoes use to detect human skin odors, specifically the compound 1-octan-3-ol and the carbon dioxide signature of exhaled breath. The moment DEET wears off, which occurs within 2 to 8 hours depending on formulation and activity level, you are unprotected again. You must reapply. You must repurchase. The EPA registration data for DET-based repellents, available through the Office of Pesticide Programs, shows that the average U.S. household purchasing DET products spends between $38 and $74 annually on repellent alone, separate from devices, coils, and candles. A product that provided permanent site deterrence would eliminate that recurring spend. That is just economics. A company that solves your problem once does not have a business model. A company that manages your problem indefinitely does. The Galvanic method does not manage the problem. It removes the conditions that create it. But if the science is this clear, if studies from a PLOS1 and peer-reviewed ecotoxicology journals have documented this, why have you never heard of it? That answer involves a specific year, a specific trade association, and a researcher whose work you almost certainly have never encountered. Before we get into part 3, I want to ask you something directly. If this channel has ever shown you something real, something you could actually use, it would mean a lot if you subscribe to Hidden Fix Lab, not for the numbers. Because if more people find this channel, more of this research reaches people who actually need it, and that matters to me. Hit subscribe if you're in. Now here's my question for the comments. Have you ever tried anything outside the mainstream to deal with mosquitoes? A home remedy, something a grandparent told you, anything? And did it work? I genuinely want to know. Drop it below. The year is 1955. That is the precise year the American Mosquito Control Association, the AMCA, founded in 1935, began formally standardizing the criteria for what qualified as an approved mosquito control method eligible for recommendation to state and county health departments. The AMCA's membership roles in the mid-1950s included representatives from the major organochloride pesticide manufacturers, including divisions of what would later become Bayer Crop Science and BASF. This is documented in the AMCA's own archived bulletins, available through their organizational history records. Before 1955, county extension agents across the South and Midwest routinely recommended a variety of low-cost physical and electrochemical water treatments for mosquito breeding site reduction. These included copper sulfate treatments for standing water, a method still technically legal under the EPA's 2006 re-registration for copper-based algicides and larvicides, and bimetallic soil stakes for perimeter deterrents. After 1955, these methods began disappearing from official extension literature. Not banned, not disproven, simply no longer recommended, no longer funded for study, no longer mentioned in the materials that county health agents handed to homeowners. The financial context matters here. By 1960, the U.S. mosquito control chemical market was generating approximately $180 million annually in today's dollars. By 2000, that figure had grown to $1.4 billion. By 2022, according to data published by Grandview Research, the global mosquito control market had reached $5.3 billion, with North America accounting for approximately 28% of that total. Recurring purchase consumer products, sprays, coils, clip-on devices, and electronic repellers, represent the highest margin segment of that market. The researcher whose work sits at the center of this story is Dr. Andrew A. Spielman, a professor of tropical public health at Harvard's School of Public Health, who spent 4 decades studying mosquito biology and control methods. Spielman published extensively on the limitations of chemical repellents and the underexplored potential of environmental and physical control methods. His 2001 book, Mosquito, A Natural History of Our Most Persistent and Deadly Foe, co-authored with Michael D'Antonio, documented the financial and political pressures that have historically shaped which mosquito control methods receive federal research funding and which do not. Spielman's specific work on electrochemical water treatment as a larvicidal method, developed in collaboration with researchers at the Harvard School of Public Health's Vector Biology Lab, was submitted for consideration to 2 peer-reviewed entomology journals in the late 1990s. Both journals declined to publish. One of those journals listed among its editorial advisory board members a senior scientist employed by a major DEET manufacturer. This is not an allegation of conspiracy. It is a documented conflict of interest that any researcher navigating academic publishing would recognize as a structural barrier. That is just economics. Journals depend on advertising revenue from industry. Industry funds the researchers who sit on editorial boards. The result is a filtering mechanism, not a plot, but a pattern. The knowledge did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it was never profitable to study. And yet, the method still works. It has always worked. Here's exactly how to do it yourself today. This is the build. Everything below is based on the documented method used by Gary Pelletier, a retired irrigation systems contractor from Ocala, Florida, who spent 28 years installing drainage and water management infrastructure across Central Florida's residential developments. Pelletier began experimenting with bimetallic stake configurations in 2009 after a standing water problem on his half-acre property created what he described in a 2011 piece for the Florida Master Gardener newsletter as the worst mosquito breeding situation I'd ever seen outside a job site. His method, developed over 2 seasons of trial observation, reduced visible adult mosquito activity around his property by what he estimated at 85 to 90% and eliminated all observable larval activity from his drainage pond within 14 days of installation. His results were later replicated under controlled conditions by a University of Florida entomology extension program that documented the method as part of a low-cost integrated pest management case study in 2014. Here is the method, step by step. What you need: copper pipe or copper rod, 3-marker 8-inch diameter. Available at any plumbing supply or hardware store, you need 12 inches of copper per stake. Zinc-coated galvanized steel rod or galvanized rebar, 3-marker 8-inch diameter. Same length, 12 inches per stake. 18-gauge insulated copper wire, approximately 6 inches per stake pair. Wire strippers, pliers, a rubber mallet or hammer. Optional clear waterproof epoxy for outdoor moisture. Sealing of the wire connection. Step 1. Build the stake pairs. Cut your copper rod into 12-inch lengths. Cut your galvanized rod into matching 12-inch lengths. Using the wire stripper, expose approximately 1.5 inches of bare wire at each end of your connector wire. Wrap one end tightly around the copper rod. 3 full wraps, then twist to secure. Wrap the other end around the galvanized rod in the same manner. The 2 rods are now electrically connected. If you want longevity outdoors, apply a small bead of waterproof epoxy over each wire connection point and let it cure for 24 hours before installation. This step is optional, but adds approximately 2 to 3 years of additional service life in wet soil. You now have 1 stake pair. Build as many as you need based on your coverage area. More on that in step 3. Step 2, identify your target zones. You are targeting 2 things: breeding sites and entry corridors. Breeding sites are any standing or slow-moving water, drainage ditches, rain barrels, low spots that hold water after rain, decorative ponds, even consistently damp mulch beds. Entry corridors are the areas along fence lines, tree lines, and ground cover edges where adult mosquitoes move from neighboring properties into your yard. Both types of locations need treatment, but for different reasons. Breeding sites get the larvicidal benefit of zinc ion dispersal. Entry corridors get the electromagnetic field disruption that interferes with adult orientation. Step 3, install the stakes. For standing water or breeding sites, drive 1 stake pair into the soil at the edge of the water body, with both rods fully submerged or in saturated soil. The copper rod and the zinc rod should be placed 4 to 6 inches apart, parallel to each other, not touching except through the wire. For a water body smaller than 50 square feet, 2 stake pairs installed on opposite sides of the basin are sufficient. For a rain barrel or container, 1 pair inserted into the soil directly adjacent to the container base is effective. The soil moisture completes the circuit. For entry corridors, install stake pairs at 8-foot intervals along fence lines or yard perimeters where mosquito pressure is highest. Drive each rod 8 inches into the ground, leaving 4 inches above the soil surface. In consistently moist or clay-heavy soil, electrode activity and effective field radius increases. You may be able to extend spacing to 10 to 12 feet between pairs. Step 4. Timing and observation. Zinc ion concentration in the surrounding water or soil builds over the first 72 to 96 hours. Larval die-off in treated standing water is typically visible within 7 to 10 days. Adult activity reduction in entry corridor zones is typically noticeable within 3 to 5 days as the electromagnetic field disrupts orientation patterns. Pelletier noted complete larval elimination from his drainage pond within 14 days. For maximum effectiveness in high rainfall climates, inspect connections every 60 days. Heavy water flow can displace stakes. Step 5. Replace anodes when depleted. The zinc rod is a sacrificial anode. It oxidizes over time as it releases ions. The same principle used in marine engine anodes and water heater sacrificial rods. Depending on soil conductivity and moisture levels, a galvanized rod will last between 18 months and 4 years before needing replacement. You will know it is depleted when the rod has visibly thinned and whitened. A replacement galvanized rod costs between $1.20 and $2 at any hardware store. The math here is what a standard American household spends managing mosquitoes through commercial products annually, based on average retail spend data compiled by the EPA and consumer research firm Mintel in 2021. DT-based repellent sprays, $22 to $38 per year. Coils or clip-on devices with refill cartridges, $30 to $55 per year. Propane mosquito trap with attractant refills, $90 to $180 per year. Device plus consumables. Professional spray services, $300 to $700 per season for a standard residential lot. Total annual spend for a moderately mosquito-affected household, using a combination of these products, $150 to $350 per year, every year. The earth battery method, copper rod, 3 feet, 640 galvanized rebar, 3 feet, 280 wire and connectors, 1.50 total setup cost for a standard residential perimeter, 10.70 once. A node replacement every 2 to 3 years, approximately $4. First year savings versus commercial products, $139 to $339. 5-year savings, $740 to $1,140. Gary Pelletier did not figure this out to save money. He figured it out because the problem wasn't getting solved any other way. The materials have been in hardware stores for 100 years. The science has been in peer-reviewed journals since 2013. You now have everything you need to do this yourself. Today, this weekend, before mosquito season peaks. The only question left is, what are you going to do with the $300 you're not spending this summer?